Hello and welcome to Unspun Live, the Herald's politics podcast. My name is Andrew Learmonth. I'm the political editor of the Herald. On this week's episode, we speak to Brian Leishman, the Labour MP for Alloa Grangemouth. He was elected last year in the general election with one of the biggest swings in the country, and I think it's fair to say that over the last 12 months, he has become one of his party's most outspoken new MPs. Not scared of criticising the government, the direction of travel, not scared of criticising the Prime Minister or Rachel Reeves. But that begs the question, how much can you push your party without pushing them away? We spoke on Sunday ahead of the vote on Tuesday about the government's welfare reforms. He's been a big critic of the bill, of the changes to the benefits. I asked him if he thought the bill would go ahead.
What do you think's going to happen then? Do you think that the concessions made by the Prime Minister are enough for the bill to get passed on Tuesday?
They're certainly not enough for me.
Sure.
Although I did say this morning that there is probably a cohort of MPs that it will placate them and satisfy their issues that they had. But for me, when I look at the proposal and the concessions in isolation, it's nowhere near enough. Because we're still going to be looking at about £3 billion worth of cuts to some of the most disabled, disadvantaged and vulnerable people in our society. And that is not what we should be doing. I've been quite open and honest from the get-go and said we do need to reform the welfare system, but it's got to be done in a caring, compassionate manner. And that means getting stakeholders, for want of a better phrase, your sort of organisations such as Trussell Trust, JRF, Scope, all of these sort of organisations. Let's get them round the table and let's actually discuss what life is like for some of the most vulnerable people and actually try and create a welfare system that is worthy for them.
You talked about reform here being necessary, but if the bill passes on Tuesday, it then goes to the next stage where there'll be a lot of time to amend it. Are there amendments? Are there changes that could still be made that could make this bill a little bit more palatable for you?
Well, what I would say to that one as well is we've got this very much artificial date that is coming on Tuesday, and then I think it's a week later. And I think, I need to double check, but I think what we're voting on Tuesday is going to be the original bill with the promise of that, we're going to change things. Now, to be honest with you, no, I want to see the legislation as they want to present it and then make my judgment on that. So I am voting against this bill. Now, the concessions, as I said there just now, the concessions, if they say that this is what we're going to do down the line, that is not enough, because you often hear politicians talk about, I'm not going to make up policy on the hoof. Well, that's exactly what this is. This is a welfare reform that will be critically important for people. It could be lethal. We've seen what happens with what austerity did for 14 years. It was the cause of hundreds of excess deaths. More austerity to combat initial austerity makes no sense. So I want to see exactly what the government want to put forward. But I will be voting against the bill on Tuesday.
Do you think it could be close? Do you think it's going to be, we could be talking, single figures here, or do you think it's going to be much bigger than that? The concessions made by the Prime Minister will have secured, a big enough majority to get it through, no bother. Because if it's close, that could, that sends a message, I suppose.
Well, my gut reaction is that speaking with a lot of parliamentary colleagues over the weekend and at the tail end of last week, there is an awful lot of us, and not just Labour MPs, but there should be cross-party support as well. We've got to actually get the legislation right, and that's my fear. It's getting rushed through, and it's certainly not going to be fit for purpose.
What needs to happen to make the legislation right? What is the right legislation for you?
Well, that's, to be honest as well, that's what I'm saying, is that we need to withdraw it, start again, and engage with these organisations and the charities, people that work on the front line and see exactly what life is like for disabled people, for some of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged in our society. We've got to look at the people that are experts and get their input. And then it's got to be a collaborative process. There are certain things that go well beyond party politics. The welfare system, the welfare state is one of these things. And also, as well, as when we look at NHS, that shouldn't just be in the hands, in my opinion, of one party, because it is of absolute paramount national importance.
Do you feel as if the leadership are listening not just to you but to party members over this?
I think it's quite clear to say in a whole multitude, a whole raft of issues that the leadership haven't been listening nearly enough. Certainly to backbench MPs, but also as well to the grassroots Labour membership. Now, when I went to Scottish Labour Conference in February, and when I went to the STUC Congress in Dundee only a couple of months ago, the rank and file Labour Party membership are not, and the trade union movement are not happy. Not being happy, they're not content with what we've done in our first year in government. We must do better. Now, the leadership really have got to take into account the opinions and the thoughts of backbench MPs and also the wider membership of the party. That's just sensible and good, healthy internal party democracy. That's what we've got to do now. If I can borrow a phrase, you can check it up and get it exactly right for me. But I'm going to give you a Harold Wilson one. The party is like a bird; it cannot fly on one wing alone. We've got a whole raft of different people from a different political spectrum in the Labour Party. You know, everyone's voice is valid, and really we should be trying to pick the brains of everyone in the party and actually form policy based on that.
But at the same time, the other argument here is that Keir Starmer stood with his, another sort of phrase we talked about quite a lot last year was this Ming Vaz strategy, where you don't really say anything that might sort of scare the horses, to mix my metaphors there. That you're walking very sort of carefully over this sort of shiny polished floor, holding a Ming Vaz. And it worked for him. It worked for him because he the biggest Labour majority in years, and many years. So, I mean, as much as you say the leadership should be listening to the party members and to the backbenchers, does the fact of last year's success, and it's almost exactly a year to the day, not show that actually they know what they're doing when it comes to.
Well, when we look at it there as well, yeah, absolutely. 400 odd MPs and a huge, I think Martin Geisler described it as a stonking majority this morning. It is a big majority, but when we actually analyse it and we do a little bit more digging, the support across the country was actually really rather shallow.
Sure.
What we've seen over the last 14 years hasn't just been that austerity and the gross inequality that I talk about. We see, to be honest, the electorate are largely disenfranchised and turned off from politics. They need something different. Now, we talked a lot about change last year, but no one, I can guarantee it, I would have a great safe bet at this, no one voted Labour last July so that we would cut billions of pounds out of the welfare bill. No one thought that was the change that the country needed. What we have seen is and I always go back to it, and we cannot afford to get away from it. We've seen 14 years of austerity where every public service has been decimated and disinvested. We have seen the very fabric of our society chipped away and chipped away and chipped away. That has then led to that escalating and accelerating welfare bill that we see, because the NHS has been starved of funding. Public services, local authorities have been starved of funding. We've created basically a low-wage economy in the country where people. When I'm coming up for 43, when I'll be 43 next month in July. Now, when I went to school, if a peer of mine was poor, it was pretty much, you could have guaranteed it was because mum and dad didn't work. Now, what I would say is you can now see two people bringing in two full-time salaries into the household and not having enough to get by, struggling to pay the mortgage or the rent, struggling to put food on the table. Never mind actually being able to participate in society and have a bit of disposable. Now, that means that we've seen the creation of a new strata of society over the last 15 years, and that's the in-work poor. Now, for the fifth or the sixth, the largest economy on planet Earth, for us to have full-time working people that are in poverty, there is something fundamentally wrong with who holds what in society. What we've got to do is we have got to present a change that the country needs, and that means a redistribution of wealth, power and opportunity for the benefit of the many in society. That's what we've got to do. And if we do that, Andrew, I kind of touched on it earlier on today as well. If we do that, forget SNP, forget Reform, forget any other, the Tories, forget all of them, because if we, as a government, actually improve people's living standards and give them better public services, give them more money, give them reduced bills, actually allow them to participate in society, it's great for the economy, and we'll have improved people's living standards, and we'll get a second term. It's very simple in my opinion.
You've talked before about a wealth tax as well. Is that right? So the 2% wealth tax. I mean, is that something you think that there is any appetite for from the leadership, from the party?
At the moment, from the general party, absolutely. Grassroots Labour members, absolutely, and many colleagues in Parliament absolutely appreciate the fundamental need that we've got to have a redistribution of wealth across society. Because not only have we seen chronic and criminal austerity, what we've also seen is in the pandemic, we saw wealth inequality accelerate at an eye-watering rate. The very wealthiest in society stockpiled more money, saw their wealth increase all the time. The ordinary people then basically spent more of what they had coming in on the essentials. That then created even further gross inequality in society. We've got to address that. Now, is that something that the Chancellor, the Treasury leadership want at the moment? Clearly it's not. I've asked that. I've brought it up a couple of times on the floor of the House and pretty much been told that that's not going to happen. They've said, we've looked at non-doms, we've looked at private schooling, and yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's good. That should happen, but that's tinkering around the edges. What we've got to have is we've got to have a fundamental reset of society in this country so that we equalise things and then we can properly build the society that we want.
You know, Brian, you've been perhaps one of the most vocal of the new bunch of Labour MPs who were elected last year. I mean, is that causing any tensions in the group? I know that, you know, there's we've seen this before with the Scottish Labour group. We've seen it before with the SNP group when you have someone who perhaps you know, is not afraid of saying what they think, regardless of what the party line is. That, you know, there are tensions there. Are you bothered by that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll answer that, and then I'm going to ask you something on the back of that as well. So it's very rude to answer a question with a question. So I'll answer firstly, and then I'll ask my question. Is there tensions? You know what? My loyalty is to my constituents. It's to the Labour Party and it's to the wider Labour movement. Now, I've got a phenomenal opportunity here. I have been very, very privileged and very, very lucky to be elected as a Member of Parliament. Only 650 of us in the country. It is an amazing honour. Now, what I want to do is, in my parliamentary career, I want to talk about things that are representative of who I am politically and the sort of things that I think that would genuinely improve society. Now, you shouldn't do that with any fear or favour at all. You should just actually stick to your principles and say that. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. So, in regard, my second bit is, what have you heard?
What have I heard about you?
About you saying about relationships. Now, I'll kick that off and say that I'm very fortunate. I've got some good friends in the group. We might not always agree on everything that I say politically. I might not agree with everything that they say politically, but I do have some friends in the group. But what have you heard?
You know your nickname.
No.
After Leishman, you'll have heard that surely.
I genuinely haven't. I have to say that's poor as well.
Oh, you know what? Have you not heard that?
Come on, the standard of journalism in this country is better than that for headline writing.
No, but you know, it's these dynamics, and I know I'm speaking here as a political journalist and as someone who enjoys the gossip and the drama as much as the policy and all that sort of stuff. But you do get, you know, parties have whips and they have party lines for a reason here. It's because actually you weren't voted in. People didn't vote for Brian Leishman in July 2024. They voted for the Scottish Labour Party in July 2024. You know, so there are always going to be tensions here if someone sort of gets elected on that Scottish Labour ticket, or in fact, you know, an SNP ticket or a Scottish Conservative ticket, and then sort of, I wouldn't want to say do their own thing, but I suppose go beyond that party line.
Well, yeah, I would say I completely appreciate what you're saying there as well, Andrew, but I would then just kind of bounce that one back a wee bit and say the sort of things that I'm saying there is, I don't want to say old Labour or real Labour values, but they are consistent Labour values. Things that in my opinion, exactly the sort of true core founding principles of the party, and I'm being true to them. So I would say that, I'm a Scottish Labour MP, I'm a Scottish Labour member, and I'm proud to be both. But yeah, I've also got to say exactly what I think, and you know, if every MP just relied on what is the lines from the party, and you never deviate off that, then you just get that. I think that breeds that sort of disenchantment and that sort of disenfranchisement, if there's such a word, with politicians. They want, say what you mean and mean what you say. That's what I'm trying to do in my time in Parliament. And then I can look back and whatever happens, however long I'm in Parliament for, I can say, well, at least I was true to myself.
Is there not a danger, though, that by being critical of the party, that what you are doing is, given how tight next year's election looks like it could be for Holyrood, that you're helping the SNP, you're helping the Tories?
No,
You're
I feel
helping
like I'm
reform.
trying to help. I feel like I'm trying to help the Labour Party actually instill, and by talking about Labour Party values as well as a Labour MP, as a Labour member, and that's it. I'm a Labour Party member.
Sure.
One member, one vote. I'm just trying to basically shape the party into what I think it should be. That sort of vehicle for, I hate the phrase positive social mobility, but giving people the opportunity, improving people's lives. That's exactly why my home is in the Labour Party, because I think that we are the vehicle for that. The vehicle for trying to create and establish an equitable, socially just and fair society. That's why I'm in the Labour Party.
Given what's going to happen on Tuesday, given we had the Prime Minister in the Sunday papers this week, saying that he'd taken his eye off the ball, to coin a phrase, but they've been preoccupied. Is his position still secure, do you think? Given the size of the rebellion, given everything that's happened in the chaos in the last week, is Rachel Reeves' position still secure?
I don't think that we should be talking about anyone losing their job. We're a year in, for our first year into hopefully a full 5-year term. We've been out of power for so long. There are people round the cabinet table that will be very much learning on the job. It's going to be a new position being in power, and being in power isn't easy. Of course it's not. So it's a new cabinet. It's a first-time Prime Minister, first-time Chancellor. I don't think anything is, at this stage, 1 year in, I don't think anything is irretrievable. I said this morning, listen, the first year hasn't been good enough. There has been some fantastic things in there. Employment rights bill, mine worker pensions, taking the railways down south into national ownership, nationalisation of vital things like that. That's core Labour Party stuff. I just want us to do a wee bit more of that sort of stuff.
Said earlier that being an MP has been the best job we've ever had, best job in the world. I think the phrase there. So it is on, as we said, it's Friday. It will be a year of you being the MP for Alloa Grangemouth. What's been the highlight?
The highlight is meeting some truly, absolutely inspirational people across the constituency and across so many different communities across Alloa and Grangemouth. I'm blown away by some of the people that volunteer their time and do so much for their community. There's so many people that go above and beyond, and thank goodness, because society, what has been created over the last sort of 14, 15 years has been a society that has governments have almost abdicated responsibility, passed things on to local government, which local government have been starved of money, starved in their budgets. That then means local communities have really stepped up, and thank goodness that they have. I'm very, very fortunate that when I get to meet so many wonderful community organisations and charities, spending time in my constituency, meeting these people, and then supporting them and trying to help them in whatever way I possibly can. That's been the best bit of my job.
What's been the hardest bit?
Hardest bit has been, from a constituency point of view, the closure of the Grangemouth refinery. Because that isn't just a constituency issue. That is something that is going to weaken Scotland's energy and therefore our national security. That also highlights the folly of where we are now as a country overall, and that such a vital key piece of infrastructure is in the hands of, number one, private capital, and number two, foreign government. Now, what we've seen over the last 40 years of the deindustrialisation of the country and the privatisation of vital services that we rely on is that we cannot rely on the private sector to look after people. It will always be, the bottom line will always be their bottom line. We've got to basically create a society that is caring, it is compassionate, and it puts people at the forefront of everything that we do. What we can then also see as well is I've got another huge industrial issue now as well, with Alexander Dennis closing as well. Now, so conversations between myself, my next door neighbour, Ewan Steenbank, the MP for Falkirk, my constituency next door neighbour anyway. We are working, to be honest, round the clock to speak with government ministers to try and figure out a way that we can save the jobs and Scottish bus manufacturing. So the deindustrialisation, that devastation, that has been the worst thing in the first 12 months.
If you could sit down with Anas Sarwar tomorrow before you head down to London, and he said, Brian, give me one policy to win the 2026 Hollywood election, what would it be?
I would say we've got to talk about how we fundamentally going to reverse the decline of nearly every public service that Scotland has had under this SNP government. From a Scottish context, let's just talk about that first. Yeah. I'd be saying that we've got to show how we can positively change things. What are we going to do that is fundamentally going to make people better off, so put more money in their pockets? Then also as well, how are we going to reduce their bills? And then 3, let's give people a vision of the sort of Scotland that we want to build. Something that has more police on the streets, that has got away from the cuts to the police force, got away from the cuts to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. How are we going to basically make sure that we invest in our Scottish National Health Service so that people can see a GP, can see a dentist, can get the care, that initial care that they need? How they're not going to wait years upon years for an operation. And I'm on a waiting list as well, and it looks like I'm going to wait between 2.5 years for my operation. Now, there's people that are in that chronic situation that are living their day-to-day life in horrendous pain. We've got to offer a vision of hope, and that kind of ties in to what I would say to the UK government. The first year in power, yes, we've had a complete mess from the Tory government, but people desperately need hope. We've got to give them the hope that this is the vision of the country that we want to build, and then take them on that journey. So what I would say is we've got to, from a UK perspective, we've got to have better policies with better messaging.
Brian Leishman, the Labour MP for Alloa Grangemouth, talking to me on Sunday. Apologies for the sound quality, went a bit funny in places there. I can't believe he hadn't heard the old After Leishman thing. Oh well. Right, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again next week. If you've enjoyed this, please follow us and like us and leave a review. And you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, just a quick reminder that we are going to be at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe this year, 4 nights at Summerhall in the Dissection Room, where we'll have live interviews with John Swinney, Anas Sarwar, Kate Forbes, John Curtis and others. More details of that on the heraldscotland.com website. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.